everybody. We are going to go over the application instructions for the 2017 Voca application. Today will just be me going through this document. Any questions that you have can be answered next Wednesday during the technical assistance call. This webinar will also be posted on the Nebraska Crime Commission website early next week. So,
the caller has left the conference.
Due in the Crime Commission office by 5 p.m. on Tuesday, April 25th. That would be the original and a copy, as well as the PDF that needs to be emailed in. I know this is a fairly quick turnaround, but I wanted to get grant awards a lot earlier for the 2017 application. And in order to make that happen, we had to really move up the timeline. Also on the first page of the instructions,
the caller has joined the conference,
where you can find the Nebraska Strategic Plan for Victims and Survivors of Crime. That can also help you when determining what to include in your grant application. My contact information is on there. If you have any questions or need assistance, please feel free to contact me. The best way to do that is usually email. Okay, so this application kit is for applicants that are either continuation or new. And please note that for this third year funding cycle, this application is going to cover from October 1st, 2017 to June 30th, 2019. So it is a 21-month project period. The reason for that is that after this project period is over on June 30th, 2019, Voca will then be operated on the state fiscal year of July 1st to June 30th. It is estimated that Nebraska in fiscal year 2017 will receive the same as we did in 2016, which is $13.2 million, as well as the $52,159 in state funds for victim assistance. For this application period, the Crime Commission will award no more than $17.7 million. And again, we will be operating on a state fiscal year after this 21-month period. Please note that if you're a project requesting a one-time expense, such as equipment or technology, that you'll need to be sure to purchase that within the first quarter of the 1-month budget. For new programs, your applications will be reviewed as competitive. The start date can be no earlier than October 1st, 2017, and the end date can be no later than June 30th of 2019. New applicants will have a pre-award on-site visit the week of May 1st through May 5th. That will be scheduled by myself, and the project director listed on the grant must be present. Once I receive the application from a new program, I will reach out to get that site visit scheduled with you. Continuation program. That's for anybody that received funding from Voca in fiscal year 2016. Please be aware that no project is guaranteed continuation funding. The continuation funding will be contingent on the following: the federal Voca funds available, successful grant management, that's both fiscally and programmatically, achievement of measurable outcomes, completion of a continuation application, and then final approval. Projects with second year funds unspent as of January 30th. That should say projects with second year funds unspent as of September 30th, 2017, may be required to deobligate those dollars. Please note that all grant correspondence will be sent to the project director listed on the application information page. The 2017 funding process and tentative timeline, these are important dates to remember, and they could change. Any changes will be posted on the Nebraska Crime Commission website. If changes occur after all applications have been submitted, then you will be notified by email. So the solicitation was announced on March 17th. Today is the webinar. The March 29th, there will be a technical assistance conference call, and then all applications are due April 25th. The staff review is scheduled to be conducted on May 31st and June 1st. It is a lengthy 2-day process. The Crime Commission Grant Review Committee, that's a public meeting, that is right now scheduled for June 30th. After the Crime Commission Grant Review Committee, you will be mailed a letter letting you know what the committee's recommendations are. Those recommendations from the Grant Review Committee then go to the Crime Commission meeting. It's a public meeting that will take July 21st, and they make the final funding recommendations. After that, you'll be mailed written notification of the approval or denial, and it will instruct you at that time to answer any contingencies that you may have. And those will be due to the Crime Commission by August 26th. And then grant award documents will be mailed out in September and October and will be due to Nebraska Crime Commission within 30 days of receiving those. Please be aware that no awards can be sent until OVC awards the funds to Nebraska Crime Commission, and that usually happens in September. There has been sometimes it has been in October. But I know that at the federal level, they are also trying to get those out quicker. This next page talks about the State Victim Assistance Fund. I'm not really going to go over that because it is a small portion of funding, and it goes to Victim Witness Services. So, Federal Victims of Crime Act, Voca grants are funds to provide direct services to individual crime victims at no cost to the victim. So those services are those that respond to the emotional and physical needs of crime victims, assist in primary and secondary victims of crime to stabilize their lives, assist victims to understand and participate in the criminal justice system, as well as provide for the safety and security of the victim. Please note that Voca does have required priority areas for the state that we have to look at when making funding decisions. So 10% of our total federal award must go to sexual assault services, domestic violence, child abuse, and then previously underserved. Best practices is one area of the applications that we do look at as well. And those are practices that have been proven to be effective for achieving safety and stability for victims of crime. These types of projects will be designed to bring about healing and justice for victims of crime. One way of doing that is with surveys. Nebraska has the overall outcome of increased victim safety. If you are survey that you are currently using and your written policy regarding those surveys. If you are a new program, 60 days after having your signed grant award, you will be required to submit a copy of the survey that you have developed and your written policy. There are some links provided to give you some information on best practices with victims of crime. So let's talk about eligibility. To be eligible, the applicant must operate as a public or nonprofit organization or a combination thereof and provide direct services to victims of crime. A public and nonprofit organization's that primary purpose is not providing services to victims of crime are eligible as long as they have components that do. Established programs must demonstrate a record of providing effective services to victims of crime and have financial support from sources other than Voca. If you are a new program, you must be able to demonstrate that a minimum of 25% of your financial support comes from other funding sources. In the application, there is a chart to fill out. It's a supplemental funding chart. So this is where you want to be sure that you are reporting accurate and complete information to demonstrate that you are eligible. Programs for Voca do have 20% match requirement. That can either be cash or in kind. If it's cash, it can not come from other federal funding. For Native American tribes and organizations located on a reservation, the match requirement is exempt. All programs must maintain appropriate programmatic and financial records. Voca does require that volunteers are utilized. We'll talk a little bit more about that in a minute. Programs must provide services to victims of federal crimes the same as they would to victims of state and local crimes. All programs must also coordinate with other agencies. We'll talk about that a little more as well. And all programs are required to assist victims in seeking available crime victim compensation benefits. So for Nebraska, that's the Crime Victims Reparations Program. And it's not that you have to help everybody apply, but you at least need to notify them of that resource that is available. And you must provide services to crime victims at no cost. As well as maintain confidentiality and comply with federal civil rights laws to include the prohibition of discrimination. So some of the agencies that are eligible are child advocacy centers, criminal justice agencies, faith-based and community organizations, hospitals and emergency medical facilities, and other agencies such as mental health services or public housing authorities, legal service agencies that would provide or have some component that provides victims or services to victims of crime. So ineligible recipients of Voca are federal agencies, including the U.S. Attorney's Office and the FBI field offices and inpatient treatment facilities. So what are the grant requirements for Voca? The main one is direct services. And that's services to victims must be activities that directly benefit individual crime victims and help them with their recovery and seeking justice. Voca funds cannot be used for the purpose of providing services to businesses unless there is an individual or individuals within the business that are a victim of a crime. So an example of that would be if there's a gas station that gets robbed, and during that robbery, the clerk that is working gets injured in some way, beat up or something. That business for the robbery would not be eligible for services under Voca, but that individual store clerk that got application is now an activity that is allowable to be reimbursed for. All programs will report quarterly data into the performance measurement tool. When you get approved for funding, you will have an account set up, and then an email will be sent to you, and you'll assign one person within the agency to be the point of contact for the PMT system, and they'll have a login and password to access the system. And we talk more about that in grant management training. The proof of nonprofit status is required if you're a nonprofit organization. It doesn't necessarily always have to be a copy of your 501c3. It could be a letter from your state taxing body or attorney general stating that your organization does operate as a nonprofit, or your state certification of incorporation that also identifies you as a nonprofit. As I mentioned earlier, surveys are required. So if you're a continuation program, you will need to submit that information with your application. If you're a new program, it'll be done within 60 days. Victim witness programs. If you're a victim witness program, it's just important that you're identifying that advocacy should begin within 72 hours or the next business day if it's a serious crime. Volunteers. All Voca-funded projects must utilize volunteers unless the Crime Commission has determined that there is a compelling reason to waive this requirement. The OVC has not stated there's a necessarily a magic number of volunteers or volunteer hours that agents must have. But if you're a nonprofit, you're a board, is volunteers, while you may not be able to use your board members as match in the application, they do make you eligible as an agency who utilizes volunteers. So it could be one volunteer that does something for your agency, and that meets that requirement. So Office of Civil Rights has required that all recipients of federal funds must be in compliance with the EEOP and civil rights requirements. And so those are outlined in here. The non-discrimination. Everybody receiving funds must have a anti-discrimination policy. Limited English proficiency. Each recipient must also have an LEP plan. And there is information for guidance on that. And that is also, we talked about the civil rights requirements and grant management training. The Equal Employment Opportunity Assurance of Compliance, that's the EEOP certification form that has to be filled out by every recipient of funds. There is a website listed on here that has a reporting tool that is now available. Every applicant must have a DUNS number. If you do not have one, you will need to contact the information provided in there to receive one. Supplanting. If you have received funds from us in the past, this is kind of new or different information on supplanting. So supplanting is when a state or local government agency cannot use federal funds to replace other existing funds. So any request to support a state or local government agency with federal funds must address how the request is not supplanting of funds. If you're an applicant and you're going to have sub-awards under your application, if they are within a state or a local government entity, you'll need to assure that they are also addressing supplanting within their portion of the application. Confidentiality. All programs must maintain confidentiality as required by state and federal law and may not disclose, reveal, or release personally identifiable information or statistical information collected in connection with Voca-funded services. You also cannot require that victims sign a release in order to receive Voca-funded services. And under no circumstances may any personally identifying information be shared to comply with reporting, evaluation, or data collection requirements of any program. There's several fiscal requirements as well. The main thing to point out is that commingling of funds on either a program by program or project by project basis is prohibited. So each sub-recipient must have an accounting system that maintains a clear audit trail for each source of funding. Also, note that itemized records supporting all grant receipts, expenditures, and match contributions in sufficient detail to show exact nature of activity will be required in order to be reimbursed for funds. So equipment, purchasing in whole or in part with Voca funds must be maintained at a minimum meeting the following requirements. You'll have to have log with the serial number, description of the property, where it's located, and the other information required in there. Payments, all payments from the Crime Commission are on a reimbursement basis. You can choose to either do monthly or quarterly. If you're going to do quarterly, your cash reports would be due the 30th of the month following the quarter. If you're going to do monthly, they're due the 15th of the following month. Reimbursements will not be made until all documentation has been approved. Positions, any position 100% funded through grant funds and or match must be 100% dedicated to the grant program. And they will have to do biannual certifications to certify that all their activities performed in that previous period were allowable. Applicant disclosure of pending applications. This must be filled out. If you don't have any, you'll be required to write none on the form. If you do, you'll need to list the agency, the federal state funding agency, the project name, and the point of contact. So allowable use of funds. This has really been updated based on the changes in the Voca guidelines. The first one is services which immediately respond to the health and safety of the victim. That could mean a lot of things, such as transportation, shelter, emergency food, clothing. The main thing is that the emergency services must be to restore the victim's sense of security. Legal services, it's those that are directly related to the victimization, to include emergency legal assistance, such as filing for restraining orders, and emergency custody or visitation. This includes legal services that are non-emergency, such as proceedings for protective restraining orders or campus administrative protection stay-away orders, family, custody, housing, and dependency matters, particularly for intimate partner violence, child abuse, sexual assault, elder abuse, and human trafficking. Immigration assistance for victims of human trafficking, sexual assault, and domestic violence. It also covers intervention with creditors, law enforcement, and other entities on behalf of the victims. Voca funds may also be used to allow victims to file a motion to vacate and or expunge certain convictions based on their status of being victims. So that portion has been updated. Services and activities that assist victims of crime in understanding and recovery from the trauma. That could be short-term therapy, groups provided by trained licensed professionals. Therapy refers to treatment for individuals, couples, and family members to provide emotional support and trauma-informed care for crisis arising from the occurrence of crime. It would also be evaluation of mental health needs, as well as actual delivery of counseling services and substance abuse treatment, as long as it is directly related to the victimization, and peer support. Services directed to the needs of the victims who participate in the criminal justice system. So this is accompaniment to court proceedings, transportation, child care, so that the victim can attend court, notification with the case, letting them know about, possible parole or what is going on there. And then services that assist victims with managing practical problems created by the victimization. So this would be anything that would help that victim kind of get back on their feet and stabilize their life. That can be parenting or life skills classes, maybe classes around economic stability, anything to help them get back. Costs necessary and essential to providing services. This would be rent, telephone, transportation, interpreters, or the use of TTY, TTD machines. Some of these items would have to be prorated. Costs directly related to providing direct services through staff, such as advertising and recruiting, Voca funded personnel, staff salaries, and fringe benefits. Crime Commission only will reimburse for basic benefits, and that is at the employer's share only. So we can pay FICA, unemployment, workman's comp, and any insurances, and then training costs as well. Restorative justice, and those are only those opportunities for crime victims to meet with perpetrators if they're requesting or voluntarily agreeing to do so. Medical costs, for non-prescription and prescription medication, prophylactic, or other treatments to prevent HIV, AIDS infection, or other infectious diseases. Durable medical equipment, such as wheelchairs, crutches, eyeglasses, and other healthcare items are allowable. These costs are allowable provided the following is true. The victim does not have access to health insurance, Medicaid, crime victim reparations, or other healthcare funding source to meet the emergency needs of the victim, and that is typically within 48 hours of the crime. So a new allowable activity that we have is relocation. And that is with the following parameters as established by the Crime Commission. So relocation can be requested for the following crimes: domestic violence, sexual assault, human trafficking, and elder abuse. This list may not be inclusive, as I am aware there are other situations that may arise that relocation would be necessary for the immediate safety of the victim. If that is the case, please contact me as soon as possible. Relocation within the state of Nebraska is limited to 3 months of rent and utilities. Relocation outside of the state of Nebraska is limited to one-time costs. So that could be a deposit and or first-month rent, utility deposits. Other allowable expenses under relocation would be reasonable moving expenses, storage units, rental expenses, and security deposits. So other allowable costs and services. Given the nature of these items, they should not be the primary focus of VOCA project request. And the applicant applicant will need to provide evidence that no other resources are available to support such activities. So under here, the main things to be aware of is that Voca funds cannot be used to simply raise the public's consciousness or for education regarding victim issues. Voca does not pay for awareness activities. It does pay for outreach. So you can do outreach notifying those in your community of the services that your agency provides. You just cannot do awareness based on certain crimes. And then cost to attend national training. Please note that only one training per person will be considered. As I stated earlier, coordination of activities is now allowable under Voca, as well as indirect cost. So indirect cost can be done in one of three ways. Either the agency has a federally approved indirect cost rate from their cognizant agency. If that is true for you, then a copy of your indirect cost rate paperwork will be required to be submitted with your application. You can do a de minimis rate, which is a modified total direct cost rate up to 10%, and we'll talk a little bit more about that in a bit. Or you can prorate all of those costs. And we'll go over that more as well. So what is not allowed with the Voca? Voca funds cannot pay for victim offender meetings that are for the offenders. It would only be allowable if it is for restorative justice and the victim is in agreement or voluntarily doing so. The other thing that I want to point out on what is not allowable is administrative staff expenses such as salaries, fees, training costs, and reimbursable expenses associated with administrators, board members, executive directors, consultants, coordinators, and other individuals, unless these expenses are incurred while providing direct services to victims of crime. If you'd like more information about what is allowable or unallowable, this website here will take you to the Federal Register. So match requirements. Match must directly relate to the project's goals and objectives, and all match funds must be financially documented in the same manner as grant funds and expended within the project period. So anything that is true for Voca funded activities is true for match. If you are wanting or needing to have a match waiver, this document will tell you what information is required in the letter. If you received a match waiver in fiscal year 2016, the OVC will require that you provide at least the same level of match as you did that year. And then those letters will be forwarded on to the OVC for approval by the Nebraska Crime Commission. To figure out your match, there's 3 steps to take. You can take your federal Voca request for the project and divide it by 4, and that will tell you your required match amount. And then your request plus your match is the total cost of your project. Again, if you're an Indian tribe or Native American organization on a reservation, you're exempt from providing match. In-kind match consists of donations to project activities other than cash and could be equipment, office supplies, rent, if either the landlord is just letting you use the space for free, or maybe they have given you a discount because you're doing excellent work for the community. That discounted price could be used as match as well. If when you're doing your application and you're kind of struggling with match, please feel free to get a hold of me and we can talk about it. Sometimes there's things that we can think of that maybe you hadn't thought of. So, value of volunteers, Nebraska Crime Commission does allow up to $15 an hour for volunteers. So if you're going to use volunteers as match, that is the rate that you can calculate them at. It does say that the pay has to be similar to other paid positions of the organization. However, when we think about that $15, we also do take into consideration that if they were a paid employee, the fringe benefits that they would have available to them as well. If you have volunteers that are on call for a 24-hour period, they may be shown as having worked a 16-hour shift, and volunteers who are on call for 16 hours may be shown as having worked 8 hours. However, if they get called out or do any actual time spent providing direct services, or taking a crisis call or whatever that is, that actual time can be used as match. Letters of support and memorandums of understanding. They're required to submit a minimum of 3 and a maximum of 5 letters of support from law enforcement, criminal justice agencies, other victim service organizations, and community stakeholders. These letters must be on agency letterhead and signed by the lead person within the agency. And they will be submitted with your application. They cannot be sent in separately from your application. The Crime Commission does not accept those. They also cannot have letters of support from employees or commissioners of the Crime Commission. If you have MOUs, those are acceptable and can be submitted as well. And if you're a continuation program, you do not need to submit letters of support this year. The ones submitted last year will show that your agency has the support of others in your service area. Application submission. All applications are due by 5 p.m. Central Standard Time on Tuesday, April 25th. Please note the applicants not submitting as instructed below will be considered invalid submissions. A complete copy of the PDF will be sent to marcella.johnson@nebraska.gov, and be sure to put in the subject line as 2017 Voca and then the name of your agency. And attach the following documents as instructed. Also, make sure received in our office by 5 p.m. on Tuesday, April 25th is a original hard copy of the application and all required attachments, as well as a copy. You will be required to write or stamp on the original that it is the original, and the same for the copy. Fax copies are not accepted. If anybody still faxes, we just don't take them. Okay, so the application format. The application has changed a little bit from last year, if you have not had a chance to look at that. So the applications must be typed. Recreated applications must adhere word for word and design to the Crime Commission's official application format and layout. Do not remove sections on the budget worksheet, and assure that each budget sheet is on one page. It must have the federal ID number We do not accept cover letters and do not put applications in folders. Use 12-point font and adhere to the page limit. I have heard from somebody who is on the ball that when they were putting in the contact information on the first page, that the 12-point font was pushing it down. So on that first page, if you need to use like an 11 or a 10-point font, that will be okay. But throughout the rest of the document, make sure you're using a 12-point font. Only submit completed budget pages that apply to the project. So if for your project you're not using any consultants and contracts, please do not submit in the consultants and contracts budget pages. Budget figures must be in whole numbers. Do not use cents. You have to round up or round down, whichever the case may be. And please check all calculations. Additional information in the form of appendixes are also not allowed. And please ensure that all required forms are signed with the appropriate signature of the authorized official. The authorized official is the county board chair, your mayor, city administrator, your board chair or vice chair, whoever that may be. So training and technical assistance is this very exciting webinar that I'm doing right now. I hope you're all still awake. And then we will have on Wednesday, March 29th from 1:30 to 2:30 a conference call. And the information to access that is there. And then grant management training will be required for new projects. And then continuation projects who have not attended grant management training since 2015, or those with new project personnel, such as the project director, coordinator, and fiscal officer. Others are always welcome to attend. The date for that has not been announced yet, but I do anticipate having one in September. So application forms and instructions, this is just a checklist that you can use for the application that you're having to do. Do not submit this with your application. It's more a tool for you. The first one is for new programs, and then the second one is for continuation programs. So applicant information, be sure to provide all requested information. The applicants listed on the grant must be the agency that will receive and disperse the grant funds. So if you're in a county, for instance, and you're a victim witness unit in that county, and let's say you're under the county attorney's office, if the funds are going to be sent to the treasurer's office, then the applicant is actually the county as a whole and not the county attorney's office. And that's important because when we get to reporting to the feds and the EEOP, we have to make sure that the applicant's agency is the same as those that are receiving the funds. So budget summary is a page where you will just put the total amount for each category that's being requested. Do not include cents and must have whole numbers, and it has to be signed and dated by the authorized official. Again, it talks about match and the requirements for that. The project period, again, which is very exciting for me and hopefully for some of you, is October 1st, 2017 to June 30th, 2019. So budget worksheet. Each line item listed on a budget worksheet must have a corresponding budget narrative that is thorough and includes all the required information. New for this year is items with an incomplete budget narrative will not be awarded. Personnel and the wages and fringe benefits for regular full-time or part-time salaried employees. Also, if you're using volunteer hours as in-kind match, that also must be listed under the personnel category. Wages and salaries, again, make sure that you're providing complete information. The narrative must include how the calculation for the cost of the personnel is determined. That is whether they're being requested for funding or match. The narrative section, please outline the job duties and responsibilities for each position and indicate their relevance to the project. Include the percentage of time spent on job duties in order to support the allocation of the position to Voca. Attach the applicant at the job description for that position, outlining the duties and the percentage of time devoted to the duties and position qualifications. And there is an example here as well, but I want to clarify that let's say you're requesting funding for your executive director. So you're going to attach the job description that for the entirety of that executive director's duties, what is the percentage of time that they spend on those duties? And you can lump them into groups of duties that are very similar if you want to do that, or you can do percentage of time to each duty. And then in the narrative for that position in your application, you're going to indicate their Voca percentage of time spent on those duties. Fringe benefits, again, it's only the employer's share, and fringe benefits can only be requested for personnel positions that are also having funding requested and at the percent allocated to Voca. Narrative should include all components of the fringe benefits. So we need to know how are they calculated. If it's health insurance, we need to know either per year or a month, if it's single coverage, if it's family coverage, and so they have to be shown by position. So here's the example personnel narrative that is thorough and provides the detailed information that is needed. You guys can look at that. So next category we have is category B, consultants and contracts. This is also different from previous years. So this category is for all contracts to purchase services and any sub-awards to partner agencies that are conducting activities and assist in the overall achievement of project outcomes. So not much has changed with contracts. The contract, you must provide all the information asked for in the narrative. Sub-awards is the passing down of federal funds to support positions such as an advocate at another agency. Sub-awards are issued by the applicant's lead agency. This is the entity who is the direct recipient or subrecipient of the Voca federal funds from the Crime Commission. If more than one consultant, contract, or sub-award will be used for the project, complete a budget sheet for each one. Consultants and contracts, please know that there are established rates set by the Department of Justice, and that is it cannot exceed $81.25 per hour or a total of $650 per day. If you have a consultant that is above those rates, we will need to work together to request permission from the OVC to do that. This also shows how to show travel expenses for consultants if they have any, and has the website where you can find the per diem rates at www.gsa.gov. And the current rates on there are effective October 16th they go by the federal fiscal year. And then mileage changes on the calendar year if they're going to change it. For subawards,
The caller has left the conference.
that will be receiving that subaward from your agency. And then you will want to have them do budget category worksheets like you're having to do. You're going to compile all that information and put it on the budget sheet for consultants and contracts. So travel. If travel expenses are needed for more than one purpose or type of travel, complete a budget sheet for each purpose and or type of travel. It does not go so far as, if you're an agency that has multiple advocates out there going to, 15 different counties in Nebraska providing services, that all for direct services can be one travel request. Again, refer to the travel chart provided in Category B for allowable costs and rates as determined by the GSA. For each travel narrative, complete a budget narrative explaining the purpose, the position traveling, and how this travel relates and is necessary to the project. The narrative must also include the allocation and calculation of each line item in that travel request. Category D, supplies and operating. Supplies is office supplies, forms, any supplies needed for operations, books, subscriptions, repair, maintenance supplies, and other items utilized to directly serve victims of crime. List of supply items by type. If you have general office supplies such as pens and pencils and post-it notes and all that, you can lump them into one type, one line item. Just in the narrative, make sure that you're identifying what those general office supplies may include. Higher cost items should be listed separately and identified, such as computers, copiers, and a procurement process should be developed to justify the selection of the budget items. So let's talk about computers. To determine if a computer is a supply or equipment, you will need to go by the agency's capitalization policy, and that will tell you which category to put it under. If your agency does not have a capitalization policy, you will be required to follow the state policy, which currently states that any item under $5,000 would need to be would not be equipment, I believe. Okay, operating expenses includes rental agreements, utilities, and purchases of non-consultant type services which are allowable under Voca and are utilized to directly serve victims of crime. If your agency is required to do an A133 audit, Voca can pay a prorated portion of that, and that would be the percentage of Voca funding for your agency's total operations. If you have to do that and you need assistance with that, please let me know. Narrative, make sure that you're describing all operating expenses and supplies. Explain why the requested expenses are necessary to support the project and will be utilized to directly serve victims of crime. Explain the cost breakdown and how match funds were determined, whether based on actual prior year's costs and justification of any increases for the next fiscal year, to include the allocation and calculation of each line item. If you're a city or county or state government. If there are existing supplies and operating expenses, be sure that you're addressing non-supplanting. Equipment, Equipment, again, it'll be based on what your capitalization policy is. Items that require bids will not be funded unless you're showing that the 3 bids were obtained as required. Again, in your equipment narrative, you want to make sure that you're describing all the equipment expenses, why they're necessary to support the project, and how they'll be utilized to directly serve victims of crime. Explain the cost breakdown and how much funds were determined, and make sure you're providing the allocation and justification for that. And again, if you need to address non-supplanting, do that as well. Other costs for category F. The use of the other category should be minimal prior to using this section. Please contact the grant administrator to ensure that requested expenses would not go in another category. Costs associated with relocation will be listed in the other costs. So if you're requesting funds for relocation, you don't need to contact me first. Go ahead and put those in the other category. The other cost narrative, again, you'll need to describe why they're necessary to the project and the benefits to the victims directly to services the victims of crime. Have the allocation and calculation for each line item, the breakdown of how much of how funds and match funds were determined, and if you need to address the planting, please do so. Sorry. Okay, category G is indirect costs. Again, there's a few ways to do this. So if you have that federally negotiated indirect cost rate with your cognizant agency, you can put it there. If you are using less than what your federally negotiated rate is, please indicate in the narrative that you're doing so. If you're using a de minimis rate, a detailed list of the expenses that are included in the modified direct cost rate and the amounts must be provided in addition to an assurance that these expenses are not included elsewhere in the budget. And that's the same if you're using a federally negotiated rate too. If the cost is included in that, it cannot be elsewhere in the budget. Here's an example for calculating your 10% de minimis rate for indirect costs. You just go by category and fill that out, and then this shows you the process of how to figure that out. I believe we have a blank one, so if you're wanting to use the de minimis and you're wanting like a blank form to use, please contact me and I will help you out with that. So on to the narrative part of the application. If you are a new applicant, you will have to do the project description, and that's where you talk about your community. There is a chart that you need to provide that shows what your community looks like based on the census data. The problem statement, what is the problem that Voca would be used to address? Make sure you're providing statistical documentation as well. And then the solution, how are you going to use Voca funds to address that problem that you previously stated? Sustainability goals and performance measures. All applicants will have some portions to do here. So this is where that supplemental funding chart is. Applicants who are state, county, or city entities should complete the information based only on the Victim Services Program. All other applicants will need to complete the chart based on the total agency. you are expecting any funding changes for the next fiscal year, please indicate that information as well. New applicants will be describing their infrastructure that supports the long-term sustainability of the project. Be sure to be thorough in this. It is something that is looked at. All applicants will provide specific activities that have been conducted over the last 12 months that reflect the agency's level of commitment to the project's sustainability. And then new applicants will also be required to state what their contingency plans are. I know that there's a lot of concern from people all over about budget issues at the federal level and the state level, and we don't know what's going to happen. I just know that for Voca in fiscal year 2017, we are expected to get the same amount. Past that, I am not sure. So that's why we're really wanting people to think about sustainability in this application year. Activities, timetables. There's one for major activities and one for reoccurring activities. Major activities are those that are not going to happen frequently over the project period. They're larger items as well. And then reoccurring activities are more day-to-day kind of operational. What is your program going to be doing? Every application must have that they will assist with filing compensation claims. That's already on the application for you, so you'll just need to identify who will be doing that, and that, should be all the staff that's working directly with those victims. Continuation information, all applicants will have some questions to answer in the continuation part, or not all applicants, just continuation applicants will have to state, in the current grant year, fiscal year 16, what have they been able to accomplish. Okay, so the part that all applicants will do is outcomes, objectives, and performance measures. And these are, keep in mind that the overall outcome for Voca is increased victim safety.
The caller has left the conference.
With that, an objective must indicate what will be done utilizing the grant funds and what will be the measure. What is the percentage that's going to be used to do that, and within what time frame. Measurable objectives either increase, decrease, or maintain something, and not activity statements such as to provide or to train or to establish. There are some examples of possible outcomes for Voca projects that you could use. If you need assistance in developing or thinking about your outcomes, objectives, and performance measures, please feel free to reach out to me, or if your program has a coalition or alliance that you're part of, there may be somebody there that can help you as well. So again, the required form is your certified assurances that are at the end of the application, and then the certifications regarding lobbying, debarment, suspension, and other responsibility matter and drug-free workplace. Those both must be signed by the authorized official that is listed on the grant application, and they must be dated. The applicant disclosure of pending application is to identify any pending applications for federally or state-funded grants submitted within the last 12 months that include a request for funding to support the same project. So if you're requesting funds for something totally unrelated to this project, that you're requesting funds from Voca for, you do not need to report those. Attachments Here's a list of attachments. Be sure to include all the ones that are applicable for the type of application that you are filling out. And make sure that the application is complete and that all of the necessary information is provided. As I stated earlier, if it's not, then those applications will be considered incomplete. If there's missing information in your budget narrative, again, please know that those costs then will not be awarded in the application. Okay, so that is it. That did not take as long as I thought. So this will be posted on the website next week, so if you want to refer back to it, you can. Again, there's a technical assistance call on Wednesday at 1:30 where you can call in and ask your questions. So thank you, everybody, for listening today.
The caller has left the conference. The caller,
Lori Hairdale,
has left the conference. The caller,
Kelly Draper,
has left the conference. The caller
Ann Power,
has left the conference. The caller